The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 200. Wow, we made it to 200 episodes. I am extremely excited. This interview is going to be different. I was able to get with a mastermind group down in San Diego, and some of them were actually listeners of the podcast. And after hearing and us mastermind going back and forth, they had told me, your audience doesn't even know who you are. You should do and really do an interview or do an episode that's focused on you and who you are, who's Wade behind the Entrepreneur's Library, and instead of covering the book. So, and actually I have to give credit where credit's due to Cody, who, if you guys see his marketing stuff on Facebook and Twitter, fantastic, what I would call an intrapreneur for the Entrepreneur's Library. He's got a ton of freedom to do what he wants, and he does fantastic stuff to really help serve the entrepreneur. The content within the blog, and again, just the social media and the stuff. I love the content, the pictures, the stuff that he creates. But he had actually suggested that I do this back on episode 100, and I was like, no. They won't want to hear about me. They want to hear about the next upcoming book. And so I stiff-armed him, and I heard that feedback from listeners of the show. And I said, okay, well, obviously the listeners aren't wrong. I should have listened to Cody long ago. But anyway, so now we're doing that, and we decided to do this instead of a long monologue. We decided to do it in an interview format, where I actually have one of my good buddies named Patrick. He lives up in Omaha. Him actually conduct the interview, kind of flip the script. Now it's not over a book. I haven't written a book yet, but he's actually going to flip the switch on me and go a little bit deeper into who I am, the company, why we started the EL in the first place. Put a little bit more of a background and purpose on what it is. But if you like this format of the interview, or if you enjoyed it, please connect with me. I'd love to connect with you guys on Twitter, and I'm at Wade D. Danielson. And again, I'll say this in the other episode as well, but that's if you want to hear from a future author, let me know. If you want to know what authors are coming up, I'll let you know by posting the days that we actually interview. But again, I want to talk a little bit about Patrick. Patrick and I have been friends for probably, almost right at, I don't know if it's a little bit longer, a little bit shorter than 10 years. And Patrick is an entrepreneur through and through, and just willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen. And I already said he lives up in Omaha, Nebraska. The app, and it's not so much just about an app, but the product that he's putting together, VoterSnap is the name of it, and he'll go into it a little bit deeper, but it's such a phenomenal product. And I would encourage you guys after this episode, we'll put it in the show notes links, but to get more information on Patrick, for those of you out there that are entrepreneurs and that are in the startup mode and getting funding and all that kind of stuff, you could learn so much because Patrick is in that same mode. But been one of my best friends. I'm not always good at keeping relationships, but he's really helped out with the process of keeping the relationship going. So again, we're going to move into Patrick interviewing me here in just a moment. I'm about to bring him on. But more than anything, I wanted to say thank you. The only reason why we're even 200 episodes is the fact that we have amazing listeners who are looking to grow personally and professionally, that are always in the, you're never going to find perfection, but that are in the pursuit of perfection and excellence, and always taking their life and business forward. So thank you for listening and being a part of this. And so without further ado, I'll bring on Patrick. So Patrick, I've just tried to explain to the best of my ability who you are and what you do. But before we get started, I'd rather it come from you. So will you take a minute to explain a little bit about you personally and some of the stuff that you're working on currently?
Yeah, sure, Wade. I really appreciate it. So the best way to explain what it is I do with VoterSnap is to briefly explain the problem I experienced that almost every voter in the world experiences. I remember voting. I kind of knew who I wanted to vote for president, who I kind of wanted to vote for Senate and House, and then I kind of just leaned towards a party after that. Then I get to the part of the ballot where everybody gets to, and they literally have no clue who the people are. I specifically remember this guy named Patrick Bourne, and he was going for school board against this other gal. And I was like, well, I like his name, I relate, and I like Bourne identity, so I voted for Patrick Bourne. looking back on it, I totally would have voted for the other person. And just understanding who these people are on the ballot was a real frustration for me because I couldn't find anything when I Google searched their names. So I set out to solve that problem with a simple app that literally replicates the same ballot you're looking at and then allows the candidates to give you a quick pitch of who they are and why they think you should vote for them. And so that's where we're at, and that's where we're going. We're changing the world with that.
I absolutely. Anytime I see when you post on social media, I love to share it and say the same thing. I almost say the same thing every time, but changing the way we vote, because what you talked about, voting straight party line or voting based on liking the name, all that kind of stuff, people might not admit it and be as quite as honest as you just were, but a lot of us do that exact same thing. Like, oh, I know this guy, I have no idea what these people are about. What they look, nothing about them. And so what a fantastic way, and it will change the way we vote. So I'm extremely excited about that. Make the more educated decision, right?
Absolutely. It's about voting smart, not just voting.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
I appreciate it. So this really isn't about me. This is about you. This is about the fact that the Entrepreneur's Library is at episode 200. And that is amazing because I remember when you first were running this idea by me, and I'm completely honored to take the reins, so to speak, on this. So let's just jump into the questions. For those that don't know you, that listen to your podcast, will you give them just a bird's eye view of yourself, where you've been, and basically leading up to where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that this question is being asked, because this is actually why we decided to do this specific or special episode for 200, because we had so many people in the audience actually ask me, hey, we actually don't even know your story. What's your story? Let's give a little bit more of the why and the face behind the EL. And so that's why we decided, and actually it was Cody, the guy who helps out with our marketing, really an entrepreneur that helps us out. But he told me, hey, you need to do this for episode 100. And I don't know why I fought it, but I actually did. And so I'm glad I'm not fighting it anymore. I'm listening to the audience, the listeners, and I'm also listening to Cody. So, but a little bit about myself. Born and raised in Nebraska, moved around the Midwest a ton, and mainly just people ask me military, if my dad was in the military, and I let him know. He actually worked for the railroad, which means you travel almost like, or you move like the military, but not to quite as cool places. So I moved around a lot in the Midwest region, and then ended up back. Actually, I lived most of my life in Texas, ended up back in Nebraska for college, and then met my future wife and decided to move back down. And so now I currently reside in Texas. But here as of recent, we now have 2 baby boys, or one I guess that's no longer a baby. He's now officially just over the age of 2, and the other one's only 11 months. So having a ton of fun with them. And I guess a little bit of background about kind of where it started was college kid, got in front of an awesome group of people, an education system that taught me the importance of reading. And that was something that completely changed my life. And I had big goals and dreams, and it really was kind of the education I was looking for. And that led me to starting my own company at the age of 25, 26, and we still run that today. We're about to have our 5-year anniversary here, actually less than a month. So, and we're really excited about that. But Guardian Network Solutions was, we found a niche for something that was missing in that specific industry, the network security industry, and we decided to fill it. And then every day we focus on helping small business owners keep their network secure. So a lot of times we do that with firewall, backup recovery, endpoint or antivirus products, and so it's usually a very neglected market. A lot of resellers try and work in the mid and enterprise. They love working with companies that have 100+ employees, and a lot of times the people that we service are the little guys, the 1 to 25 space that really don't have a whole lot of expertise. They're fantastic at their own business, but they don't necessarily know everything there is to know about IT and network security and such. And so that's been our main goal, and our passion is helping those guys get protected and treating them like they were an enterprise, even though it's just a small operation. And ourselves, Guardian Network Solutions is a small operation. We have 13, 14 employees. We're not an enterprise by any means. So that was our goal. And over the years, I started off that company, and I was kind of it at first. I was the IT guy, the manager, the HR, the sales guy. I was everything. And then we grew organically. And it was just a personal decision we made. We didn't want to take outside funding, so we grew organically and started to add people fairly quickly. A couple months in, and it was a slow process, but we started to actually scale. And this past year, so it was our fourth year in business, we hit barely, but we hit over $4 million in revenue. And so we have huge plans for the next couple of years. And really in 2016. Looking to be a $10 million company, which is somewhat, from what I've read, really rare air as far as the percentages of companies that make that to that. So now dad, husband, and business owner. And then obviously we started the EL podcast as well. And that's more a passion project than anything else. But that was maybe a more in depth than a bird's eye, but kind of a bird's eye of where I'm at now.
No, that's totally awesome. I had no idea that your father and family, that the reason you moved around was because he worked for the railroad. I didn't know that, and I've known you for years. I'm surprised you didn't mention the fact that we had good friends that always called you Wrestler Wade.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was funny. That's how. Well, I guess there was two of us, right? There was two Wades, and they decided that one was Wade and one was Wrestler Wade.
Yeah. So I'm glad you spent some time in Nebraska, so we had a chance to get to know each other.
Absolutely.
So really appreciate that bird's eye view of things, because it's amazing how you can know somebody pretty well, but you still don't know their full story.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
All right. So next question. If Mark Cuban or maybe even Donald Trump were to introduce you to their audience, what would they say?
I honestly don't know what they would personally say. I know what I would want them to say, but I actually don't know what they would personally say. I would hope that they would talk about me being someone who's more of a time crusader, someone always looking to maximize the most out of life. And I'm a big believer, and I don't know what quote it was, but it was talking about first and foremost, focus on putting more years onto your life, and secondary, then putting more life into those years that you have. And the way I took that was, the traditional method of retiring at 60, 65, 70, or never, as we're seeing it nowadays, was what can I do to actually buy back those years? What if I could retire when I was 55, 45, 35, 30? Then I would have added years to my life and added that time that I would be at a day job, the 8 to 5 plus travel time. So the 7 to 6, 11 hours a day. How do I buy back? How do I work to get that time back? And then once I have it, then fill it. It's one thing, I mean, I don't care what age you retire, but what are you doing then with that time? If you retire at 65 and then you're stuck in front of the TV or stuck, sitting on a lawn chair outside all day, there's not a whole lot of life in those years that you actually have. So I'm hoping that that's the way they would introduce me. Someone who knows that he's never going to be perfect, but is always in the pursuit of perfection. And that's what I think it's about.
Yeah, man, that is awesome. The pursuit, the journey, that's what it's all about. So leading into this, understanding that's how you'd want them to introduce you, what was one of the first main defining moments in your life and reasons that made you make a decision to become an entrepreneur?
So one of the big things for me, people always talk about, a why was getting married. I realized, I was okay as a single guy being fairly, I want to say broke, but fairly broke, living in a friend's house and living on a half inflated air mattress and all that kind of stuff. But the thought of when I really got serious about proposing to Jackie, my wife, bringing someone else on, that thought never crossed my mind that I was going to bring someone else in to live like that. There was just no way. So getting married was a huge part of it. And it was the first time I felt like it made me, the book that I love, that I talk about all the time, Think and Grow Rich. It made me think at a level that I'd never thought before, to really stop and look for the best ways. Because at first I needed to make money for the wedding ring. I wasn't going to give her some 50 cent, cracker jackbox, ring. And she probably wouldn't have accepted that anyway. But so my first was I need to make some extra money to buy an engagement ring and show this woman how much I love her. And so I started thinking, I was working one job and I started going, okay, well, maybe I will be a valet because that's what I'd done in the past. Or maybe I will, as a secondary job, maybe I'll get a server job as a secondary job. And that was just what I would call normal thinking. That was just kind of the normal casual. It didn't take great depth. But the problem with that was I was looking for more ways to that was going to take up more of my time. I was thinking in, basically trading in more of my time for dollars. And when I started to think even deeper, I got into, the solution, more of the thought of owning my own business. Now, one other thing that really nudged me was, and this is kind of a personal story. Sometimes it almost chokes me up because there was a Christmas where I wanted to go visit my folks back up in Nebraska. And it was one of those deals where I was about to get snowed out. So I had a day or two off. And I'm a guy who, in sales, I never took time off. I took time off if I was going to a conference to learn about how to be a better person, better sales, better business owner, that kind of stuff. So I barely ever took time off. I had a day or two off for this specific Christmas break to go up and see my family. And there was a storm that was coming in a day early that was basically going to snow me out. That if I was going to leave at the normal time that I was planning on, that I had aligned up with the bosses and all that kind of stuff, that I was going to be snowed out. And so I remember calling them and having to call both because they said, well, why don't you call the other one? And them really not being very happy. I was the second best sales guy on the sales staff, showed up, or I was the guy that was there early. I opened and closed the place, hit my numbers, exceeded my numbers, and was doing fantastic. And I remember them giving me a lot of guff about this. Like, this was kind of a big deal for me to, because I was needing to take one extra day off to make sure that I got in. Matter of fact, I was calling them at 5, 6 o'clock at night to let them know of the situation so that I could then leave, and drive through the night to barely miss this storm. And it was a big deal. And I remember just being like, man, I had a mom and dad telling me what to do, which made sense from 1 to 18, and I still listen to this day. But now I have this mom and dad telling me what I can and can't, and they're telling me that I can't. These two bosses are telling me that give me a lot of trouble for going and wanting to see my family, and I put in tons of time and effort. And what I realized real quickly was I was not really in control of my situation, and I knew through reading that entrepreneurs did have more control of time and money. And so that was definitely a big, heartstring that got pulled. Was, man, I have to ask for permission to go see my family. And now I don't. If I want to go see my family, I see them whenever I want to because I've kind of bought that time. So those were two extremely big moments in deciding to become an entrepreneur.
I think a lot of us can relate to that, of why we either want to become an entrepreneur or why we've taken the leap already. Yeah. Is those emotional heartstrings that say, you know what, I want to have more control. I want to do things a little differently. And so that's awesome. That's awesome that you shared with that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Next question. What was your mindset in taking the leap from working for a company full time, meaning steady paycheck, security, to actually starting a company where you have the responsibilities to think about, like a mortgage, wife, kids, etc., kind of tags along with that previous reasons that you had mentioned?
I'm glad this question gets asked because mindset is such a massive part of winning and losing in the entrepreneurial game. And there's two ways of thinking about it, right? Again, that's why we're talking about mindset here. Your kids are an excuse not to start a business, or your kids are the reason to start a business. And that's the way I thought about it. And even though I didn't have kids at the time, and that was purposely, I decided, hey, I want to get time and money and control on my side before I decide to bring a child in. So I worked really, really hard for that future child. But we did have a mortgage and I did have a wife. And the thought process was, it was a bigger risk. The way I looked at it, again, mindset, it's a bigger risk for me to actually keep working a job than it was for me to actually be an entrepreneur who bought back his freedom, because that time that being an entrepreneur allows me to focus more on my marriage than if I was gone again 11 hours a day, leaving it. And it was actually more than that for me. I think I was leaving at 6:30 and getting back around 6:15 or 6:30. So 12 hours of my day was focused on creating income. And then I've battled traffic, and I come home, and I wasn't necessarily the best Wade I could be once I did get home after an hour or an hour and a half drive. And so I saw it as a larger risk by not starting the company, not owning my time, by not having more free time and control, that was actually going to be riskier for my marriage.
Wow.
And riskier for time with kids and those things that really mattered.
Wow, that's a totally flip on the perspective that most people have. And it's not just a shift in mindset, it's a shift in priorities, realizing that is awesome. I was literally talking to a friend the other day, and he was asking some questions about possibly taking the leap into a business opportunity. And with that nugget of information there, man, that totally could change his perspective and his decision-making process. So that's awesome.
I think one of the things that people talk about fear being bad, but I think if you learn from it, I now kind of have this backside fear of having regret. And it's not actually based on, they talk about false evidence appearing real. It's actually based off of past experience. I don't share with a whole lot of people. Maybe I've only actually shared it with my wife, but quick story, when I was in high school, and I picked up sports, and I picked up wrestling, and my dad didn't so much teach me through talking. He taught through action. So many success principles, show up early, stay late, seek the heat, get around people, associate, those different kind of things. And I really excelled and and grew quickly in a sport, wrestling, that I only started when I was a sophomore in high school. But for some reason, when I transitioned to college, I actually lost, and those things didn't actually stick with me. And I was no longer showing up early and staying late. And I let things get in my mind that wouldn't have before, like experience. I guess my first expectation when going to college was people were only going to have similar experience to me. They've been wrestling for 3-4 years. And when I got there, most of them, because I was going to a small NAIA college, most of them had wrestled since they were 4 or 5. Matter of fact, the next, I think, least experienced person had started when he was in 7th grade. And I let that actually get in my mind instead of just sucking it up like I would have in high school, and said, well, great, I just got to work harder and longer than the rest of these guys and smarter than the rest of these guys. And so I had let those success principles, go by the wayside. And it's something that I actually still, to this day, it's getting less and less as I really have purpose and significance in the rest of my life, but I still have dreams. And I say dreams, but it's almost kind of a nightmare, because I mailed it in. I actually mailed something in completely, and didn't follow through with the success principles. And one thing, there's no way I can go back. I'm not going to be 18 again. I don't have 4 years of eligibility, or technically 5 with a red shirt of wrestling again, to go back. I don't have a do-over. And so that's the same thing I look at to go along with your question. When I look at kids, wife, all that kind of stuff, it's not like I can, at 90 years old, when I look at, the kind of the end game, go, oh, you know what? I wish I hung out with my kids more. Let me jump in my time machine and go back. And so regret is something that I keep in front of me as something that, and I think back to that, and even that, it's still a frustration to this day. Because there's only, as a human being, you only have certain years to do certain things, right? If you're 65, you're not going to be a stellar All-American wrestler, or really, if you look at most sports, you're not going to do it. And so you're going to take advantage of certain portions of your life, or you're not. And so I think that's something that, even though it kind of hurts to say, but there was a scar, and I'm not looking to have scars all over me and a ton of regrets, when I'm older, or now for that matter, but definitely when I'm older.
Yeah, I totally can relate. I think keeping regret in front of you as a motivator there's actually some wisdom in it. because it keeps for me personally, it keeps me taking action on the things I want to do. That's awesome. So one of the things I personally wanted to ask you is you're coming up on your 5-year anniversary with GNS, and knowing that around 90% of businesses don't even make it to the 5-year mark, let alone be as successful as it is. So what, from your perspective, are the reasons why Guardian Network Solutions has been so successful and have made it this far?
I think in the shortest, most straightforward term, because I'm a business owner and not an expert in the IT industry, this is my personal belief, but I believe that most people fail in business because they're so specialized in what they do, but they don't know the business side. For example, if you owned a small flower shop and you know everything there is to know about flowers, everything, but you don't know business, I don't think that you have a very good chance of succeeding, because you don't know how to price, you don't know how to get market, you don't know how to get people in the doors, and I think that's when they talk about, you know, this massive percentage of companies that don't make it to 5 years. Is my question would be, I'm not sure if those are business owners. I think those are people who are specialized heavily in what they do. They know how to work with steel, they plastic moldings, they know how, again, flower shop. They know better than there are probably thousands of people out there, millions of people that know greater in depth on IT. Matter of fact, the employees at our company, I think, probably look at me and go, I don't get how you own an IT company. You are kind of IT illiterate. and they're right. But I know how to build systems and processes. I know how to market and sell and create value and those different kinds of things that actually require here's the big thing people don't want to talk about, but for the company to actually make money. If I knew all about IT, what does that actually guarantee me? Does my knowledge of IT actually put money in the company and food on the table? No. It's my ability to actually sell myself and sell what my company does that actually does that. So my personal belief, so many people know extensively their product or service or everything there is to know about their industry, but they haven't studied business.
That's awesome. Tim Ferriss talks a lot about exactly what you're talking about. Being a jack of all trades and actually puts you in advantages when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And not underestimating what it takes to actually become skilled and masterful at a particular thing. So awesome. So the next two questions, they kind of go hand in hand. And it's we're kind of shifting from what you do with GNS to more about the podcast and more about the Entrepreneur's Library. So, being a podcaster and being in this specific niche within personal development, what's the primary content that you're seeing most successful entrepreneurs are consuming right now? And to tag along with that, how do you kind of see that changing over the next 5 years?
From what I've seen, I think the predominant sources are still, books, blogs, magazines, and over the last couple of years, it seems like a huge insurgence of audio books have been the main source for individuals. Where I think it's going, though, is, and I know we're saying this on a podcast, so I might be biased, but I think you will see a large shift to, and not only because a lot of people don't know what a podcast or what that even means, but to audio on demand. So many people have already done that with video. I mean, YouTube is video on demand, the Netflix, that kind of stuff. People are kind of getting away from the general structure of having cable and you can't control the programming of that to, I can get on Netflix and watch episodes of this whenever I want. I don't have to wait for them to come on actual TV. Well, and the other thing that I love, and I think people will find with podcasting or audio on demand, is the specificity of it. So the personal reason why I loved books is that they're so specific that I could go find exactly, if I wanted to find a book on something that's extremely niche, a niche of a niche of a niche, there's a book on it. However, would I really find a radio that's going to talk about that? So let's put this in a real life example. And Cliff Ravenscraft, an actual podcast, he does a podcasting class. I think it's Podcasting A to Z or something like that. But he talks about small wooden boats. And I love his example because where I could pick up a book on small wooden boats, maybe even a magazine, but probably not a lot of other things that are actually as specific on that with a large amount of content. Again, blogs are somewhat shorter. Whereas with a podcast, you could actually find someone's show that is completely on small wooden boats. And if you look, there is actually a show on that. So that is a extremely niche down thing. You're not going to turn on the radio to a certain channel and they're going to be talking about small wooden boats on a consistent basis. So again, the old school version of Spray, which is, okay, I turn on my TV. I mean, I think even before you couldn't record TV, you turned it on and you were basically at the liberty of what was on. You didn't get to choose what you wanted to watch so much. I mean, you knew, okay, I got to turn on my TV at 7:00 at this time to watch this show. And those methods are more of a Spray, where this is a very focused. You're an entrepreneur and you want specific information on how to start up or sell your company or all these different things. There's a podcast on there and multiple on every single one. So if this guy you don't like, he's the host, or this format you like better, there's so many options. So for me, that's where I believe it's going is, and we might get away from the word podcast. I don't know if it was Amy Porterfield or, I think it was actually Jamie Tardy who talked about that it might be called audio on demand, just meaning that you can listen to what you want when you want. And with the technology moving to where it is, Apple and Google Play in cars now, people are going to be able to go in and tune into exactly what they want to. I don't think a whole lot of people listen to audiobooks until here recently. And so the shift to podcasting, you've already seen the growth over the last 2 years, and I think it will continue.
All right, next question. When did you realize self-education and personal development was the way to real and lasting success for you?
I think the first time I realized it was in college, 21 years old, and I was going to these classes that weren't very specific. Again, going back to our last question, the specificity of it, I was learning business law. I was more interested in business and marketing. I was learning business law, which is a big, thick book, and it's all based on California state law. And I live in Nebraska at the time and was planning on, at some point in my life, moving back to Texas. So I'm learning, again, this big, thick book. I was drawing pictures. I wish I could go find this book. I'm basically drawing comic book type figures on every single page as we're kind of going through it in class. And then I picked up, and I was never I was the person in college that said, I will never read again. Reading is so unbelievably boring. And I when I get out of college, I will never do this again. And to be honest with you, I didn't really do it in college. I found other ways of getting beside reading until I finally read a book that I was interested in, and that was Think and Grow Rich. And from that point forward, I don't consider myself addicted to anything, but I was addicted, not so much to, I guess, reading, but I was addicted to personal growth, personal and professional growth, but and that came through reading. So therefore, I guess I was pretty well addicted to reading and improving myself. And so that from then on, I would actually put my book bag down and I would put my book tilted, my business law book tilted on top of it. And then I would put Think and Grow Rich inside of it. And so it actually looked like I was reading along and going along with the, look up every once in a while, every page or two at the professor. I'm not suggesting this to everyone. My point was just that this is my story, and that was my opinion, and I'm glad I did it. To be honest with you, I'm glad I did, because that material, studying that specific portion of business law, was not where I was wanting to go. And I was reading something that was specific, and it was self-education, and it lit a fire that still to this day. Now it's changed a little bit because I don't read as much as I did back then, because I take in information from so many, like we talked about earlier, from podcasts, from books, magazines, blogs, audiobooks, the whole deal. Now it's a combination of all of them. So self-education has actually gone up. However, reading has probably gone down. But that was, I think, the first time. I always knew I wanted to, for the longest time I can remember, like 10 years old, I wanted to own my own company. I always had these ideas of products and different things like that I wanted to do. And I would kind of re-engineer or look at certain things and go, why don't they do this? And stuff like that. So I always kind of had that frame of mind. But as far as self-education goes, that really didn't start until I was about 21, 22.
I can totally relate. I totally freaked out when I read my first personal development book, and I was in this weird euphoria of extremely excited about what was going on in my own mind and how excited I was to move forward, but at the same time so angry that I was 21 years old and I had not read one thing or been taught one thing from the stuff that I was reading that was so valuable to me.
Yeah, it's tough. it's tough to go back. I mean, again, you don't want to live by regrets, but yeah, I mean, that's why some of the future projects that I want to work on is getting that kind of content into people at a much younger age. And that's something that's going to be a life passion of mine, something that I'm doing when I'm 60, 70, 80, however long I'm blessed enough to live, but is getting that information. Because that's my thing, man. What if the principles, I know I'm not gonna be able to read Think and Grow Rich to a 4-year-old and them understand, but the principles could be relayed from 4, 5, 6, and 7. So I can take calculus 9 and be the super math whiz, but does that help me with mindset, paradigm shifts, and the stuff that really is going to matter the most in real life scenarios? I have yet to be stumped since I got out of college. Someone has yet to stump me on a math equation. Not because I'm so smart, because I've got something called Google, or a wife that was a mechanical engineer and that remembers how to do it on a graphing calculator, or Excel, or many different things. I that's where testing. I understand why they do it in school, but at the same time, I mean, there's not a whole lot of jobs, or at least the position I'm in right now. I don't have a timetable. Hey, you have 5 seconds to answer this question. You can't ask anyone else. I'm kind of in the opposite world. If I surround myself with super unbelievably smart people, it actually makes me look like I'm smart, and they have all the answers. I think it goes back to the Henry Ford. He talked about that all the time.
I was thinking the exact same reference, or maybe even Dale Carnegie or Andrew Carnegie as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, totally. Those are some of the most successful people throughout history, and they literally had no experience or expert knowledge in what they were doing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So going from books, how did you come across podcasting?
So you mentioned him earlier. You mentioned Tim Ferriss earlier, and that was actually the first. I had read his book, and I had never read anything like it. Whether people that are listening right now agree with everything that's in that book or not. Matter of fact, when I usually preface that book, I tell people to take what they want. The grocery store mentality. Take what you need and want out of it, and leave the rest. But I got a ton out of that book, and I was actually researching Tim and trying to find more information on him, and actually came across a podcast called Entrepreneur on Fire. It's a 7-day week podcast that basically focuses, and the content's just perfect. It's very motivational. It's there's some how-to in it, frustrations, stories, quotes, and it's great for business owners, entrepreneurs. And I fell in love with it real quick, and then started branching out and looking for other podcasts from there. Awesome.
So is that what really kind of sparked the idea of the Entrepreneur's Library then? Were you listening to podcasts and then it came about, or was there a specific problem that you were kind of experiencing?
So I was looking for a way to diversify from some of the other companies we own. And the way that I always like to pretend, you always hear of people again, me kind of focusing on not having regret. You hear, didn't they say like the guy who was ahead of the patent office in like 1896 said that everything that will be invented has been invented? Mm-hmm. I've never wanted to be that guy. So to be completely honest with you, if I was looking from that guy's angle, I would say that network security is not really going anywhere, especially in the next 5, 10, 15 years. I mean, people are going to continue to try and attack computers, and then there's always going to be the good guys that are trying to keep them from attacking computers. And so I don't see that industry going away, but I like to pretend like it is. I like to pretend like, whoa, what if someone pushed a big button and no one ever needed backup recovery, firewall, and antivirus ever again? Well, I wouldn't have a business. And therefore, then I would be back, possibly searching for a job. So one thing I was looking to diversify, and I'm a big believer in seek and you shall find. So I was out there seeking other business opportunities and all that kind of stuff. And I learned from John, who runs Entrepreneur on Fire, the podcast, that you can actually monetize a podcast. But even beyond that, I think it was where I wanted to find, or where I guess I've kind of found our niche was, I was always looking for my next great book. The books that really just cut you open, opened you up, took out the bad stuff, put the good stuff in, and made you a better person or a better business owner. I was always looking for some of those. And sometimes I'd find books that were a little bit more watered down. And then, man, though, when I found one of those impactful books, it changed my life. So, but finding those is not always easy. I was using Amazon. I was using Google. I was trying to find a good, quick, clear, and credible way. I love Amazon. I use it all the time. The only challenge is 1 stars can be from some guy or girl that hates life, and a 5-star might be from their mom or dad. And so credibility behind username Jojo92, or do you want to hear it straight from the author's mouth? And that's what I wanted. So really this came out of a need of and I started to look for the podcast to listen to myself. And I told myself again, and going back to the regret thing, if I complain about something, I have to do something about it. And so my first thing was, wow, there's no podcast that helps people find their next great read, that helps them find this phenomenal book that's going to change their life. I got to create it. And so that's basically how, what sparked the idea. I mean, I'd spend time, I'd turn on the TV at night and be Googling best books on selling your company, and see some article from like 2004. In the top of the Google search or whatever. And so how many books have come out since then on selling a business, new and relevant books. So that was really the main point. And there's several other reasons. I've always wanted to better my association, and now I get to talk to entrepreneurial authors, technically 5 to 7 times a week. And so that's been a huge advantage, and the list goes on, but those are the main reasons.
That's awesome. I can totally relate. I think one of the most recent books that impacted me the most, I found through a podcast, and the author's he wasn't even a published author. It was a self-published book. He didn't even have physical copies. It was only out on Kindle. And literally this book by Srini Rao called The Unmistakable Creative. Actually, that's his podcast, but the name of his book is called The Art of Being Unmistakable. It changed my life. It literally changed my life. And I learned about him through another podcast regarding startups and creativity. So the value that you're bringing is beyond comparison, because who knows what that next book could do for somebody and how much it could change their life.
Absolutely. So, I didn't get to meet him. I got to see him at a conference. He was one of the keynote speakers, and what a transparent guy. He was very transparent.
Yeah, that's one of the things about his book is he convinced me that I needed to be the no BS version of myself all the time. And I was so caught up for so many years trying to be being like those I admired versus what God created me to be. Yeah. And so it totally changed my life. So anyway, appreciate you for putting this podcast together, because I know it's helping people. So what kind of separates Amazon, Goodreads, other book review sites from the EL podcast?
I think the biggest thing, we've covered a little bit. I think some of the biggest things are credibility, a deeper dive, the fact that they're short, sweet, straight to the point. But when I say credibility, I'm talking about, again, straight from the author. This isn't someone who read the book who's coming from this different angle or that different angle, or is deemed as a book reviewer. This is the actual author themselves. And the deep dive portion, I always call it, question number 3 or whatnot, but the question where we ask them to take a deep dive is really the meat and potatoes, where someone can learn everything they want to know about the book in a 5 to 8 minute period of time. Which if they listen to the whole podcast, we keep it short on purpose. Is 18 to 23 minutes, which we've seen is really the average drive of Americans, or here in the States. So we kept it short and sweet, so someone could go, hey, I've been looking at this book. They're looking on Amazon, maybe at the office, and they're like, well, let me go back over to the EL, and they listen to the episode on the way home, and they decide, this isn't exactly what I need at this time, or they go, wow, I need to read this book immediately. And that's because that's the kind of thing I was always looking for was that, I was looking for a resource that was going to tell me if it was the book for me next.
I can totally relate. So one of the interesting things that happened to me recently, and it kind of goes right along with the value I think that you just had mentioned about the EL podcast. So Simon Sinek talks about why in his popular TED Talk, and he has a book that kind of goes into depth about his TED Talk, about the why. And what's interesting is the entrepreneur's library and how it's formatted, it helps you make decisions based upon what you're saying, helps you make decisions on if you should buy that book or not. And his TED Talk, I was about to buy his book. I watched his TED Talk and I realized I had enough information that I didn't need to buy his book. So it saved me a ton of time by having his TED Talk. I think the Entrepreneur's Library does the same thing. But to get back to Simon Sinek, he talks about the why behind things. What's the why behind the Entrepreneur's Library?
So the primary reason is to help entrepreneurs, and we talked about it a couple different times, find that next great book that will change their lives. I can't say it any other way. One of the questions that we ask in there is we ask for a book recommendation that is for paradigm shifts and lifestyle shifts, and that's what I am a constant seeker of, because every time I'm able to pull a nugget out of a book, every time a book changes my perspective in a way that I didn't have before, maybe based on the way that I was raised and that kind of stuff, it changes the way I think for the better. It has changed my life, changed my income, which then gives me more free time, more time to do, and more control. And so my largest goal is I've got to help people find that next nugget that's going to help them move forward. And for everyone, that's different. It's been different throughout the 5 years. I needed help with systems and processes. I needed help with hiring. I needed help with starting up. Maybe I don't have any plans right now of selling the company, but at some point, if I need help selling the company, what's the best book on that? And we just talked about there's 100 different things, a million different things that entrepreneurs need help with. And so how can they tap in, use our podcast as a resource, look through, find the one that are on what they want, or even if you go to the yelpodcast.com, you can put in a phrase, and if you're looking for startup, and it'll pull up all the interviews actually on starting up. So really, I want to create this resource for entrepreneurs where they always have a spot to go look. They're not doing what I was doing, going and Googling and finding random blog postings from 2004 and trying to look on Amazon, but that's based on reviews. And this guy had a huge network and he asked them all to leave him a review, so he had a good review on his book. To truly find the life-changing books. And then the second would be to actually help the authors sell more books. I'm trying to think. Think and Grow Rich was written in 1937. It's a fantastic book. I wonder how many books actually came out that entire year. I bet more books will come out today than came out that entire year. And so his was not a needle in a haystack like it is today. There are phenomenal books, Patrick, that you and I will never read because there's too much competition. There's too much competition out there in the amount of books that a person could read. 100, 150. I say it on the podcast all the time. There's hundreds of books that come out on topics that entrepreneurs need and want to read every single month. I don't care if you have 10 lifetimes, you're not going to get through them. So that's, again, primarily help the entrepreneurs, find that next great book, but also help authors get their fantastic content out there in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just did a Google search for best book for entrepreneurs, and you're ranking on the first page, the EL podcast is. So that's pretty impressive considering how strong that key phrase is. Yeah. So what's next for the EL? You've got a lot of things that you've done, but where are you going?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. The biggest one is video. Again, we're always looking at how do we best serve the market, and everyone loves different kinds of information. I've never been a massive blog reader, but some of our audience is. And I've never been huge on maybe audiobooks. I've started to get more into them. So what we're trying to do is really be able to capitalize on the different markets of helping entrepreneurs find great content. So one of those things is we're launching a video podcast, and more than anything, it's going to cover rapid reviews. Basically, the books on video. And also we're going to be taking notes on screen so people can actually really take down the most essential information from the book. And they're going to be short. That's another thing that they're going to be. They're going to be 2 to 4 minutes videos of us running through the books, talking about the most key important parts. So right now we don't have we haven't really captured video, or we've tried in the past, and we didn't feel like we were doing the book any justice. So we redid it, we revamped it, and now those will be coming out here shortly. And then I think, more importantly, we're going to have where individuals who want to connect with me on Twitter, which my Twitter handle is Wade D. Danielson, but can now figure out what authors are coming up before they actually even launch. So a lot of times I'll be doing some live tweeting to let people know. So they'll know who's coming up, in the queue, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks before they actually get launched. So they know what to be prepared for. But hopefully more significant than even that, if they connect with me, they can actually let me know who they would like to see come on. If there's an author, a book that the listener would love to see, highlighted, taken, a deep dive into, then they can, direct message me or throw out a tweet and let me know of that. So, and the other stuff is not, I guess I'm not really in a stage where I want to pull the curtain back just yet, but we do have some other really, really phenomenal things coming up here in the very near future.
Sounds exciting, man. Cool. Well, next phase of this is the rapid fire round. So quicker questions, quicker responses. So are you ready to rock and roll with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So here we go. If you could write the perfect book for entrepreneurs, what would you title it?
I think I would title it The End Game, and it would be focused on helping them realize to look at their life back. And again, this comes off of me not wanting regret. Look at it from the proverbial, I know it can be kind of mortal sometimes, but from the proverbial deathbed, whether that's 70, 80, 90, 120, whatever that is for that individual, look back and look at what they wish they would have done more of and what they would have done less of. Therefore, focusing on the end game, not even so much of the long game, but the end game. So that's what I would title it.
Nice. What is the one thing that you've implemented personally in your life that was an absolute game changer that you really think would add a lot of value to others?
I call it timelining, which actually helps me then reverse engineer. So I do this with my goals. I will use up a very long marker board, whiteboard, and actually draw out, the next 2 years. And I will put the different months, and I will put goals, trips, action items, business things that I need to get accomplished, things for the kids, the wife, everything along this timeline, where I want to be at this point. And then I even take it back and I make a second timeline with more of what I need to do this month. And then the timeline gets even more specific on what do I need to do this week. And then me personally, I don't do a timeline for it, but I personally know what I need to do each day. And re-engineering, because me saying I want to write a book is such a big goal that I don't necessarily have to do anything tomorrow. If I said I'm going to write a book in 2016, well, tomorrow I can actually. It's hard to keep myself accountable. 2016 is far away. I don't need to do anything today. But when you reverse engineer that goal and you actually have it on a timeline, you can actually go back and look and you have it. Now I'm taking writing a book into, what was today's task? Today's task is to research blank, blank, and blank. And so it's taking this, how do you eat the elephant? They say one bite at a time. It's my way of, okay, I've got the elephant. I found the elephant that I want. That's maybe my 2 year. Now let's break it down into monthly and then, weekly. And then now I know what I'm going to do that day. And that helps. And then sometimes it just helps for knowing what's, it's keeping a calendar as well. Hey, in May, I'm going on this trip. And in this time, I want my kids to know this, and this, because they're going to be this age. It's important stuff like that. So that was not a quick answer, but I'll try and do better on the next one.
No, that's totally okay. And I actually have a follow-up question regarding that because it's a question that I have personally. So knowing that you create a timeline and you have this kind of mapped out on a marker board or on paper, I've done the same thing. But running a business and doing things and taking action and constantly learning, what's interesting that I found out is that timeline changes. So for example, you could be working on something and the outcome is completely different than what I had anticipated, good or bad, which completely adjusts all the other goals and things in the timeline. So how do you personally kind of readjust that timeline whenever you have some of those major things, those changes in your timeline, if that makes sense to you?
Absolutely. Timing is going to change. My expertise on something might take longer or shorter than I initially anticipated. And so, yeah, it's definitely a living and breathing timeline. And people, Jackie and I, my wife and I, we're very planned people. We plan out children. We plan out a lot of different things. And a lot of people can kind of make fun of us for that. But at the same time, it allows for an amazing, because we plan it out, it actually gives us a ton of freedom in knowing what's going on. And we don't really get caught off guard very often because we're very well planned. If that does that make sense?
It does. That's cool. Living and breathing timeline. I like that because, we're personally working on a startup. It's always changing. The business model is changing. The results are changing. The plans are changing. So cool. That helps. I appreciate it.
Just to add to that, Patrick, too, is we're actually going to be coming out with some collateral on that on the website, some different, exactly how to timeline the aspects of it. And then here shortly as well, and this is kind of pulling back the curtain, but we'll actually have a course in which that's a very small portion of it. The course will be more on leveraging what you have to get what you want. But timelining and reverse engineering is going to be a part of that. So that'll be something that we'll go into way farther depth and the listener can look for in the future.
My plan had worked. I pulled back the curtain.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, sweet. Everyone seems to be talking about the value of having morning routines these days. I hear it all the time. So do you have one? And if so, tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this first happened, I interviewed Hal Elrod, who's probably one of the biggest evangelists of having a morning routine. And he wrote Miracle Morning, and I should have the episode pulled up, but I don't. But if you guys want to listen to that, you'll have to go back and look at Hal Elrod, which you can search for. But incredible. It was one that I immediately got done with the interview and downloaded the book. I had to have it immediately because of how much I knew this would change my life. And I kind of knew I should have been waking up earlier, and I didn't have a game plan. And so at first I just implemented, stretching, drinking water, reading, different things like that I really wanted to get done. Make sure that they were constants, because if I wasn't doing some of those things, it would get lost in my day of kids and business and wife and life and all that kind of stuff. So the morning ritual was going to make it to where I made the time. And then after a few months, actually, I wanted to take it a step further. And I don't know if I haven't heard of others doing this, but I now do it, and a portion of that is actually dedicated with my wife. So I wake up at 5 a.m. The first hour is mine, and she does the same. The first hour is hers, but the second hour is for my wife. And we get together, we get on the same page. We talk about trips that are coming up, and we talk about business, and we talk about kids, and we just talk about everything that we cannot talk about because we have a 2-year-old and an 11-month-year-old, and they refuse to let us talk sometimes. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. Kids don't really cry all that often, but man, they love to play. And if I come home and mom and I are in the same room, and mom and dad are in the same room, I'm getting tackled and wrestled, and they're hassling her as well and all that kind of stuff. So it is almost impossible, or has been. It'll continue to get better, but to have a conversation with them. And so instead of being a victim of that, that's something that we decided to be a victor over. Hey, let's wake up earlier. Let's wake up earlier. Let's make sure that this time, because also I look at it again, looking at the end game. These kids are going to be around. They'll be around forever, but at the same time, I'm going. They'll be 18, 19. They'll move on, and I'm still going to be married. So I still want to have this amazing relationship with my wife, and that's part of it. So a lot of it's, we're planning out future trips, and it's like dream building time. We're talking about future house and what that actual house means, and educating our children and stuff like that. So another long answer for your short question, but
for the listeners, that's episode 65.
Perfect. Okay,
on the podcast. Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you for looking that
Great
up.
Book. Hey, no problem. It's a pretty good book, and That's great. I didn't know you and Jackie had hour two. That's pretty.
Yeah.
That's pretty intentional when you think about it, and it's another level of discipline that a lot of us could take some cues from.
Yeah, and actually, hour three is usually with the kids from 7 to, or sometimes it's not quite an hour, but we wake them up at 7 and we go down. We eat breakfast with them and chat with them. And they don't really chat back just yet, but I guess we more talk at them and just take it easy. Take that hour easy, hanging out with them. We usually turn on some music and it's dance party time. They both love for that. Everyone probably has on the radio Geronimo. They love that song. So so it's a little bit of eating, a little bit of dance party, and then time to move on.
Nice. So what is one habit you wish you had?
One that I really, and I hate to use the word wish because it seems like I'm not going to do anything about it. So something that I need to change and I will change is I need to eat slower. I know this is random, but I'm kind of the opposite of a foodie. Those guys appreciate the food and they travel for the food. And I'm the guy who just eats to live. And we could have a meal together and you could ask me, how was it? I don't remember. I ate it because it was lunchtime. And then I moved on. I think it was pretty good. And if there's foodies listening right now, they absolutely despise that I just said that. But that's true. And especially at social events. I had my dad was in town. I had dinner with him and I think I was done, eating like 20 minutes before him, which I still sat there. I talked and all that kind of stuff, but I felt bad because sometimes that other person's like, well, maybe I need to step it up a little bit. And that's not the purpose. I've got to not be you don't always have to be a go-getter. You don't always have to do everything fast and straight to the point. And eating is one of those things I just need to take my time.
That's hilarious. Napoleon Hill actually talks about the process of just eating slow and enjoying your food and really being grateful for it as you go through that process.
Yeah, it's better for your actual, from what I've read with his stuff and Clement Stone, is that it's better for your body. Again, I should be focusing on that because in the end game, if you're half chewing your food, there's a big difference between chewing it fully and half chewing it. So I'm going to work on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. A funny story, my mom, when I was a kid, because I suffered the same problem that you just described of eating too fast, she would force me to eat with chopsticks.
Oh, wow.
Because I would eat too fast. And so needless to say, I got pretty good at chopsticks and it really didn't solve the problem.
Well, and then when she wasn't looking, did you just grab it with your hands?
No, I don't think so.
That's what I would have done.
Yeah, it was at a Japanese restaurant. They throw the shrimp anyway. So
yeah.
Nice. If you can go back and redo anything in your entrepreneurial life, speaking on regrets, what would you change?
I think the first thing would be the way we hired. We were really good at implementing systems and processes into allowing into the sales process. So beginning to end, A to Z of the sales process we did, but we didn't include systems and processes into interviewing, hiring, firing, all of these other things that make up a company besides just selling. So I'm not going to say I don't regret putting those systems in first because it made selling quicker, faster, and we could do more of it. And again, bottom line is you need money coming in to continue to have a company. And so I don't regret that, but I regret not implementing systems and processes into the hiring aspect of it. The training. Oh, I just missed that. The training, the interviewing, the hiring, and the training. And we've implemented that and we're about to blow up. We're really excited. We think we will be a $10 million company by 2016 that will have more than doubled because of the systems and processes that we now have in place. So yeah, if I could go back in time, I would put those processes in.
Awesome. What is the best advice you've ever taken from a book?
I think the best advice from a book or just point blank would be appreciation. Those that appreciate just seem to live an unbelievably more fruitful life than those that don't. The ones that look at things differently and just can find appreciation in the little bitty things. And then to go along with that is time. Time is worth more than money. If you're out there searching for the dollar bill, you've heard every different cliche. You can't take it with you, and all those different kinds of things. But someone put it that Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, the richest people on earth, cannot buy back 20 minutes of their day. They can't buy it back a year. So it doesn't matter if you have all the money in the world, you cannot buy back more time with your kids. Again, unless time travel happens, it's not going to happen. So that hit me hard because money can always be made. It's limitless, and we can always go after that. But time, we won't always have.
That's awesome. Gratefulness leads to gladness, not the other way around. Yep. Totally agree. Now, interesting question here. If you were stranded on an island, I won't say with a soccer ball and a handprint or anything.
Wilson!
But if you were stranded on an island with only one book, what would it be?
So there's so many different ways of thinking about this question, because at first I'm like, man, I want the biggest book ever so that I can use it as a fire starter. Then I started thinking, no. I would rather have a book on survival. Okay. But I think hey, how about a book on survival, how to actually survive out there and not die in the first in the day or two. But if I think how the question is maybe intended is as far as the book that is just kind of the quintessential book that you wouldn't mind reading multiple times and that would help you, it would absolutely be, and the audience already knows the answer, but Think and Grow Rich. It's so multidimensional, and it would be the thinking that would not, I guess, have me grow rich on the island by myself, but would help me figure out a way of getting off the island and back to my family. So
that's totally awesome. Think and Grow Rich is definitely one of my favorites. I've got to put a plug in for an audiobook, Your Right to Be Rich by Napoleon Hill, because it covers all the same principles that are in that book, but it's him actually giving lectures on those. And so it's not like an audiobook. It's literally Napoleon Hill with all his personality and flair, teaching on all the principles of Think and Grow Rich. So that's Your Right to Be Rich by Napoleon Hill on audiobook. It's definitely worth your time to listen to that if nobody has listened to that.
Yeah, you first introduced me to that, and I've actually shared that very sparingly because I thought it was a best kept secret that you now just threw out into the whole podcast. No, I'm just joking. That's awesome. Again, we're here to add value, right? And so that's I completely agree. I listened to it multiple times. It's long. It's a long lecture series, and sometimes it's good because he covers some things more than once. But I agree with you. Love it.
Totally great stories that aren't even in the book that he goes through as well. So Awesome. So I think that's it. Wade.
No, I appreciate it. I Patrick, thank you for coming on. Again, I thought of a lot of different people that when it first said, hey, you got to tell your story, I didn't want to just come on and do this long monologue. And then I started wondering, well, who, if we did an interview based, who would be fantastic, have the personality, and be coming from an awesome place to be able to add value to the conversation and do it in just the best way possible. And you were the first person to come to mind. So I appreciate you being able to come on and do this. And I know you briefly got to cover it at the very, very beginning, but I think that our listener base would love to hear more about it. So will you take a second more, or it doesn't have to be a second, but a minute more to explain, exactly what you're doing. And it doesn't, I'm not talking about just VoterSnap, but just as a person, what are you doing? What are you studying? What are you reading? And that such.
Yeah. First off, man, it was a total honor to get the opportunity. And I'm like I said, I'm really honored that you thought of me and, to do this podcast and to interview you, because from the outside looking in, I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. You're in Texas, and from the outside looking in, I literally have friends that I meet up with for dinner or coffee, and they're asking about you. Hey, what's Wade been up to? I mean, his podcast is really successful, and how do I get to know him? So, I've never told you that, but literally I have a handful of friends that, because of some of the posts that I've shared on social media and they know our relationship, they ask about you. And so it's a total honor for me to have the opportunity to do this. And so, to follow up with that, what am I up to? Let's say, a year ago, I essentially changed careers, 2014. I've always had somewhat of an entrepreneurial mindset. I was more of in a sales entrepreneur type role, if that makes sense to you. Changing careers is really tough. It takes a lot of learning, like, for example, like the EL podcast and all these different podcasts. There's literally something you can learn on every subject. But when you're changing careers and you're going from, let's say, working at a Fortune 500 company in sales, like I was doing, to moving into a startup that it deals with technology and marketing and politics, like VoterSnap, there was just so many things that I had to learn and then apply. It wasn't like I just literally had no clue where to start, and so there was a long process of learning, doing, failing, learning, doing, failing, and then it seemed like year one, I had to be full-time working on my startup to actually accomplish the goals that we accomplished in year one. I'm really happy that for the 10 years previous to that, I had done a lot of personal growth and personal development through a lot of the books and things that we've mentioned so far, to where I wouldn't have been able to accomplish what I accomplished in year one of my startup without that, because I was learning so much on the tactical and strategic side of building a startup. And so year one was literally full-time, balls to the wall, to accomplish launching our prototype and then launching our minimum viable product in Omaha and Lincoln. And right now, through this first quarter of the year, we made some adjustments in the technology that we're doing, made some major adjustments in the marketing that we're doing, and are seeing some really, really nice growth as far as in a local election in Lincoln, Nebraska. Right now, yesterday was the first election of the year that we did, and then we have a second one on May 5th, which is the general election. And we're hopefully, looking to become an international startup here before the end of the year. So possibly Canada is the parliamentary election in October is something we're looking at. And so we've gotten a ton of advice from the entrepreneur community here in Omaha to really kind of move things forward. And so if, one of the biggest things that I don't even think we mentioned it in this podcast is the importance and the value that I've received, but also just through observation of all the other successful entrepreneurs I know, including you, is the value of association. And sometimes association can be something just like listening to a book and reading a book because you're essentially getting that mindset and that thought process. But also it's really important that you on purpose associate with people that are in life where you want to be at, that are also in a mindset that's always personally growing and learning and reflecting and thinking about what they want to accomplish. Because if you're around toxic people, they're going to drain you, and it's going to take the spark that you have inside you, and it's going to dilute it. And so it's really important to think about who you're hanging around with, whether that's your friends, your family, and on purpose build relationships with people in life that where you want to be at. And so right now with VoterSnap, we're excited. We're growing. We honestly believe wholeheartedly that we can change the world through this technology and through VoterSnap, because everybody, not everybody, like literally the majority of voters all throughout the world experience that same basic problem when they vote. They feel guilty, they feel lazy, and they vote uninformed. And when you get uninformed voting, you literally have wrong people in office. Most people don't know this, but Adolf Hitler was elected to office. The people elected him. And if you really think people were informed more about that person, I really don't think he would have been elected. Wow. and most of these politicians don't start out going for president. They start out at the local elections. And that's where most people are completely clueless and lost as far as when they're voting. And that's really the most value that we bring is on those small local elections. And so we're not only serving the voters, but we're serving those candidates and their campaign managers in a huge way too, because most of those lower level candidates and even the independents, they don't have the finances, the resources, the knowledge, or the wisdom to actually accomplish winning an election. So what we're doing with VoterSnap is we're bringing these two major problems together into one simple solution, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we can do to change voting and throughout the world. And so just in the next 10 years, like you said, we've got some things that we're working on that we're not going to unveil, but the financing that's going to be coming in this year is going to be pretty exciting because it's going to allow us to build out our technology so that we can scale internationally. So we're pretty excited. I appreciate the time.
So that what you were saying there towards the end, Patrick, how do people find out? So some people in here might have an interest in getting involved with you. Some people just might want more information on you to follow what you're actually doing as an individual or even as a company. So what's the best way for the listener right now to get more information on you and what you're doing?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So if you Google search Patrick John Stevens, I think that's the best way to find me, but you can find me on Twitter. My handle's at VoterSnap CEO. You can reach out to @VoterSnap, which is our company Twitter handle. You can find me on Facebook, Patrick John Stevens, LinkedIn, Patrick John Stevens, tons of different ways. I even have an about.me/Patrick Stevens. So there's a few places you can go. If you're in the Lincoln, Nebraska area right now, that's the only place where our app is live, but votersnap.com, you can check it out. And if you want to just check out the user experience, you can go to votersnap.com and enter in a valid Lincoln home address, and it'll pull up a ballot for you. Not necessarily that you're actually voting in that election, but you can at least get a taste of what we're building. So
that's excellent. Get a taste of what they're going to be using here soon.
Absolutely. The 2016 election's coming up, and the news has been with Rand Paul coming up for announcing his presidency. There's a lot of news coming out lately.
Gotcha. Well, very good. Well, Patrick, first off, thank you for coming on again and helping us do the interview. We'll put all the show notes, all those links that you just brought up so that individuals can find out more about you. We'll put those in the show notes at the elpodcast.com under episode 200. And so those will be easily findable. But again, I know I keep saying it. Thank you for coming on and being willing to take on this new interview style episode with me.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks again for listening in today. I know it's a longer episode than you're used to. I think our normal episode's 18 to 23 minutes long, and this one was an hour and 20 minutes plus. But I appreciate you guys sticking with us and listening, and I hope that this is what you were looking for. If it wasn't, if this is not what listeners were looking for as far as a deeper dive into kind of the why behind the Entrepreneur's Library and who I am, then please let me know what I missed. Again, Wade D. Danielson on Twitter. Let me know what we could have done differently. I would love to hear from you guys. But if you want any information on what we talked about, you want links and resources, obviously they'll be at the elpodcast.com. And here's to the next, I guess, 200 episodes. We're excited more than ever, and we can't wait to serve you further. So please let us know how we can do that.